Hey, you don't look like you live here. That's all it took for a sunny afternoon to turn into another chapter in America's endless manual on racial profiling. Mavis Brooks, walking her two dogs, suddenly became a threat in the eyes of men with badges who see melanin before humanity. Sirens wailed, boots closed in, and the air reeked of arrogance. But when her loyal dog stepped forward, teeth bared, the hunters froze, realizing too late they'd just become prey. In a country where injustice hides in plain sight, this ending might just bite back harder than they ever imagined. Where are you watching from? Eden Hills wore its prettiness like a press suit. White picket fences scrubbed clean, porches with rocking chairs staged as if for a magazine spread, lawns shaved down to the millimeter and edged with manicured impatience. On gray afternoons like this one, the neighborhood felt even more curated. The sky a flat sheet of steel, the light toned down to the color of old nickels, the kind of quiet that made every small sound, sprinklers ticking, leaf blowers whining, seemed like a performance. Maya Brooks moved through it with the steady gait of someone accustomed to hostile terrain, one hand relaxed around a pair of braided leashes, the other tucked into the pocket of her weathered field jacket. Atlas, the larger German shepherd, paced on her left. Nova skimmed her right side like a shadow. Their ears tracked the world while their bodies kept a heel, obedience balanced with a watchful alertness that had taken years of patient training and a philosophy-born necessity. Control without cruelty, protect without escalating. Eden Hills studied her the way it studied everything different. She could feel it, not just the curious glances bouncing off car windows or the blinds narrowing as she passed, but the subtle heat of the street itself, the way space drew a line around her, an invisible chalk mark that even the wind seemed to step over. She'd learned to read that air. In Kandahar was the absence of birds, the way a road went too silent. Here was the rearranging of smiles, the neatness so tight it squeaked, a lawn sign about neighborhood unity perched beside a security camera that blinked like a threat. Walter Briggs stood half-hidden behind one of those cameras. He had the reliable face of the cul-de-sac. Flannel sleeves rolled to forearms, a jaw like a fence post. The benevolent scowl granted to men who write HOA emails about garbage cans left visible. He watched Maya as if she were something that had wandered in from a different channel. Too dark against the pale clapboard, too strong among the ornamental maples. His rake hung useless at his side. The neat furrows he carved across his yard made a tidy pattern that ended abruptly where his gaze had caught on Maya and her dogs. Her eyes were forward, her expression neutral, but a lot lived behind that calm. Years of answering the chain of command, the click of safeties, the math of seconds when a wrong assumption becomes a life. It was a practiced stillness that some people mistook for submission. She let them. Atlas and Nova did not. The dogs read bodies like sheet music. Nova's ear flicked when Walter shifted his weight. Atlas's pace lengthened by half a step, and then equalized when Maya's palm brushed his shoulder blade, a signal as soft as breath. Steady. It might have ended as one of those small moments that slide off the day, another glance, another fence, another person who doesn't wave. But Walter was not built for letting things slide. He believed in order, and the kind of order he believed in had a shape and a color. His fingers found his phone before he had an articulated thought. The way a smoker finds a lighter in the dark. He turned his shoulder away from the street, as if to protect some private decency, and dialed 3 numbers everyone in Eden Hills knew by muscle memory. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice carried the particular crispness of professionals who do not have the luxury of ambiguity. Walter kept his tone low, neighborly, reasonable. This was important, perhaps the most important part. A threat declared too openly might sound like prejudice. Kept vague. It passes as prudence. Yeah, hi. Not exactly an emergency, more concern. There's, someone walking through here with 2 large dogs. Doesn't seem like they're from around here. Looks a little off, to be honest. Can you describe them? The operator asked, routine folding into the moment. Tall woman, he said, and hesitated where he meant to say the word he would never say. Darker complexion. Military-style jacket. The dogs are German shepherds. Big. It's a quiet street with kids, you know? Just feels not appropriate. Not appropriate. Not from around here. Off. The phrases stacked like polite stones. building a neat wall around a thing he claimed not to be saying. Are the dogs behaving aggressively? They look trained. It's the vibe. He lowered his voice further, glancing at the house across the street. We've had issues lately, suspicious activity. Neighbor's camera picked up movement last week. I just don't want trouble. I understand, the operator said, understanding in this context, meaning the system will move. What's your address? Units will swing by. Walter supplied the numbers. He didn't look at Maya while he did it. He looked at his lawn as if he could anchor himself to his rows. He told himself stories as the call was logged. He was protecting the block. People would thank him. What if the dog snapped at a kid? The stories had the smooth, worn field coins he'd carried for years, and they bought him what he wanted. The right to be anxious without calling it what it was. Maya didn't need to hear the conversation, to know the content. She felt the neighborhood tense, a ripple that moved through the afternoon. She'd seen that before. A person steps into a space that people think they own, and suddenly the air is paperwork. Atlas's tail made a small, uncertain circle. Novi emitted a single quiet huff that Maya understood as a question. She answered by adjusting her grip a fraction, and the leashes hummed with assurance. She could leave the block in 3 minutes if she picked up her pace. She could also shave those minutes to 1 if she cut through the alley behind the Briggs house. But she kept the sidewalk in the pace of a citizen who refuses to be moved along by somebody else's fear. She had a grocery list folded in her jacket pocket, a mundane anchor: oat milk, brown rice, sweet potatoes, dog treats. She thought about how the supermarket feels like the last honest place. People arguing over avocado's ripeness instead of who belongs. But even there you can hear coded questions at the deli counter when she orders without a wedding ring. Are those your children? How long have you lived here? Where are you headed after this? In the military, questions could be invasive, but they were time efficient. Here, they were exploratory surgery performed with smiles. Atlas glanced back, and she gave him a look that said, "Not now," which in their language also meant "I'm here, we're fine." She'd built those languages with both dogs because language had been removed from her too many times. Someone else naming her, someone else writing non-compliant, in a report when what she had been was careful. Eden Hills valued carefulness in lawns. In people like Maya, careful was mistaken for secretive, a prelude to danger. Across the street, a wind spinner clicked lazily, multicolored blades turning against the gray. A teen on a scooter hovered at a corner and then ducked away when he saw Maya watching. Polite, skittish, the choreography of a neighborhood that performs safety rather than practicing it. Walter had moved closer to his mailbox as if to justify his presence outdoors, but his eyes stayed with Maya, cataloging, tidying her into a label he could hand to a dispatcher. He wanted Maya to be a category, because categories are stable. People are not. She thought about the first time she had walked this loop after moving in, how the street had been so aggressively green in summer that it almost hurt, the hydrangeas too blue to be believed. She'd told herself then to be patient, to give people time to understand who she was beyond an outline. And some had. The elderly woman 2 doors down who asked about Nova's training regimen and then asked if Maya could help her with her anxious rescue beagle. The mail carrier who always made time to scratch Atlas's head and talk local football. The good moments existed, but good moments do not cancel architecture. They are chairs set on a slanted floor. Kindness can make you comfortable without fixing the tilt. Walter ended his call. He didn't pocket the phone, not yet. He looked up and met Maya's eyes across the air. She didn't give him anything to interpret. No challenge, no smile, just a steady regard that acknowledged him as present but not central. It was a small act of self-preservation, to exist without performing. He flinched first, then pretended he hadn't, rearranging his face back into the neighborly scowl that said he was simply tending to his property. "Afternoon," he offered, a beat too late, the word turning brittle in the cold light. "Afternoon," Maya returned, her tone even, the syllables neither warm nor sharp. She moved on. The leashes traced calm lines through the air. The sky sagged a little lower. Across Eden Hills, a software switch flipped from green-amber on a dozen phones subscribed to Neighborhood Shield app. Unfamiliar individual with large canines, observed near Meadowlark and Chestnut. Photos from doorbell cameras stitched together a path she hadn't consented to. The algorithm had learned this tone of caution from 1,000 tiny reports, and it pushed that tone back into people's hands, as if it were a mirror. When people looked, they saw not reflection, but permission. A delivery van eased past, and the driver glanced over. The quick recalibration of someone clocking whether he needed to intervene. He didn't. He sped up. The wind picked at the flag on Walter's porch. Somewhere a dog barked 2 streets away, and then, as if the sound had been waiting its cue, a siren lifted into gray air, faint and far enough to mistake for a lawn tool, until it climbed and clarified into that particular institutional wail. Only 3 words, and a whole machine of prejudice began to move. She could have said that out loud, and nobody would have known where to file it. Instead, she reorganized the grip in her right hand, reminded Atlas and Nova the cadence she preferred when atmosphere curdled. The dogs matched her breath. She didn't change her route. She didn't run. She refused to help fear make its case. The sound of police sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder. The streets of Eden Hills shifted as daylight thinned into something heavier. Streetlights blinked awake one by one, casting halos over neatly trimmed hedges and driveways lined with polished sedans. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and cooling asphalt, but under was a stillness with edges, like the pause between a question and its answer. Maya Brooks walked that edge, her pace deliberate, her hand steady on the braided leashes of Atlas and Nova. The dogs moved in unison, their paws drumming a soft, even rhythm against the sidewalk. A low hum of tires approached from behind. She didn't turn. She had learned to read the cadence of engines the way others read body language. This one slowed as it came into range, lingering a little too long in her periphery. The street reflected its headlights like water. The hum became a crawl, the crawl a presence. Maya's jaw tightened, not from fear, but from a familiar burden of prediction. The patrol car slid past her line of sight in the convex sweep of a side mirror, its blue and gold crest briefly illuminated under the street lamp. She caught the silhouette of 2 men inside, one with his arm draped casually over the window frame, eyes fixed forward in a way that meant he was actually watching her. The car rolled ahead, then drifted to the curb 20 yards in front of her, nose angled just enough to say stop. Atlas shifted his weight, reading the interruption. Nova's tail lowered into a slow wave, her instinct somewhere between curiosity and caution. Maya gave a subtle click of her tongue, their signal to hold steady. The driver's door opened first. Officer Greg Rayner stepped out, a tall man with the kind of posture that announces not just authority, but the enjoyment of it. His uniform was crisp, his walk measured, each step punctuated by the squeak of leather. The passenger door opened almost in sync, revealing Sergeant Colin Mercer, broader and shorter, his gaze sharp but restless. "Evening," Rayner called, voice neutral enough to pass as professional. "Mind if we have a word?" Maya stopped just outside the reach of their shadows. "Sure. What's the issue?" Her voice was calm, the syllables even, the sort of delivery designed to offer no foothold for escalation. "We've had reports," Rayner said, letting the phrase hang like a trap someone else had set. "Someone matching your description, walking 2 large dogs, possibly loitering." He looked at her, as though waiting for her to fill in the blanks he wouldn't say. "I'm walking my dogs," Maya replied. "That's what people do on sidewalks." She reached into her jacket for her ID, slow and deliberate, so there was no misunderstanding. She handed it over without breaking eye contact. Rayner glanced at the card, then at her, his brow twitching just enough to betray that her spotless record hadn't fit whatever narrative he'd been building. "Maya Brooks, you live in the area?" "I do." Mercer stepped closer, his gaze sliding down at Atlas and Nova. "Big animals," he said, not quite smiling. "They trained to attack?" "They're trained to follow my lead," Maya said, her tone clipped but still measured. Mercer crouched slightly, making a half-playful, half-testing sound some people use with dogs. Nova tilted her head. Atlas didn't move. Then Mercer's hand flicked toward Atlas in a sudden, sharp gesture meant to startle. The shepherd's muscles tightened, but Maya's palm was already there, pressing a silent command into his shoulder. "Hold." "That necessary?" she asked, her voice dipping low. "Just making sure they're under control." Mercer replied, though his eyes said he was measuring her control more than theirs. Rayner stepped in again, returning her ID. Mind if I take the leash a second? Just for safety while we talk. His tone carried that false politeness that assumes agreement is inevitable. I do mind, Maya said, firm but calm. They're under my control. There's no safety issue here. But Rayner had already reached out, fingers curling around the braided lead attached to Atlas's collar. It wasn't a yank, yet, but it was an intrusion, a claiming of space that didn't belong to him. The contact snapped something invisible between them. Atlas's head came up, Nova's stance shifted, and Maya's spine straightened into something forged. Her voice cut to the dim like glass. Let go of my dog. She stepped forward, closing the distance just enough that Rayner had to register her presence as immovable. At the same time, her other hand gave Atlas the pressure cue that meant stand down, channeling his tension into stillness rather than reaction. The dog's weight stayed steady beneath her palm, but his eyes had fixed on Rayner with the unwavering attention of a soldier awaiting orders. Mercer took a half step back, reassessing. Rayner hesitated, then released the leash slowly, as if to suggest he'd been in control of the decision all along. But the air between them was no longer neutral. It was a line drawn in the dust. You don't need to be defensive, Rayner said, but the edge in his voice betrayed that he'd felt the shift too. And you don't need to put your hands on what isn't yours, Maya replied. Her tone didn't rise, but it carried a weight that made Mercer glance at her as though seeing her for the first time. For a moment, the only sounds were the soft hum of the patrol car's engine and the faint hiss of a sprinkler system kicking on in a nearby yard. The neighborhood's curated quiet had become a stage for something raw, and neither side was inclined to break character. Maya adjusted the leashes in her hands, her knuckles steady, her shoulders squared. The dogs mirrored her posture, an unspoken pact of loyalty. She knew what was happening here wasn't about dogs or sidewalks. It was about reminding her of boundaries she had never agreed to. Her gaze locked with Rayner's, and in that silence was a mutual understanding that neither of them would forget this encounter. Not tonight, not for a long time. No weapons had been drawn, no commands shouted, but the exchange had already taken on the charge of something larger than the four bodies standing there. It wasn't a matter of if this would leave a mark. It was a matter of how deep it would go. No weapon needed. Only a leash to start a war. A doorbell camera at a nearby house quietly recorded the whole thing. The Internal Affairs Office of the Eden County Police Department didn't sleep, but it didn't know how to look like it had gone home for the night. Past midnight, the hallway lights dimmed to a sterile glow, casting long shadows against file cabinets and closed doors. The low hum of servers came from a corner room, where monitors blinked with silent urgency. Detective Lauren Darnell sat in her glass-walled office, the lone pool of warm lamplight in the building. Her blazer hung on the back of her chair, sleeves rolled to the elbows, coffee cooling on the desk beside a stack of complaint reports. She was halfway through a case review when the knock came, soft, almost reluctant. It was Malik, one of the IT techs, holding a tablet under his arm. Got something weird, he said, stepping in. Darnell motioned for him to sit. Weird in what way? He set the tablet down and tapped the screen, bringing up a series of timestamps and alert logs. This is from Neighborhood Shield, he explained. It's that community safety app the department partnered with last year. She knew it, marketed as a modern watchman for suburban America. Residents could report suspicious activity, get real-time alerts, even stream surveillance footage from their smart doorbell straight to neighbors' phones. On paper, it sounded harmless. The reality had been complicated. Malik continued. Tonight at 6:42 p.m., a report came through. Suspicious person walking dogs near Brookline Drive. He tapped to enlarge the note. The description was vague, but there was a photo, grainy, low light, yet unmistakably Maya Brooks. Darnell leaned forward. Who submitted it? Technically, no one, Malik said. It was flagged by the app's automated recognition system. The camera at 214 Brookline has a motion sensor tied to facial and gait analysis. It ran the image through their model, matched it to certain profiles. Her eyes narrowed. Profiles. He hesitated before answering. The app is supposed to identify non-residents. But look at this. He pulled up the algorithm's decision log. Lines of code like output scroll past. Detected subject, high threat probability. Detected demographic, African American female. Cross-check with resident database, no match. Assign priority alert, tier 1. Darnell felt the weight of it immediately. So, the system saw a black woman, decided she didn't belong, and pushed an urgent alert to every patrol car nearby. Malik's expression tightened. More than that, it pinged Rayner's phone directly. He's marked as a rapid responder in the app, which means the moment Maya stepped into that camera's field, it was basically an invitation for him to intervene. She leaned back, running a hand over her face. This wasn't random bias in the field. This was design. Who signed off on this integration? She asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be clean. County board approved the partnership, Malik said. But the model itself? It's proprietary. The vendor calls it behavioral risk scoring. He let the phrase hang in the air, as if the ugliness of it spoke for itself. Darnell stared at the data on the screen. The neat columns and technical jargon were just a digital mask for something older and uglier, the same instinct that once made neighbors clutch their purses when someone with the wrong skin tone walked by, now dressed up in lines of code and push notifications. She thought about the patrol report from earlier that evening, how Blana had read on paper. No mention of how it started, no mention of the leash, no mention of the subtle battle for control. And now here was a missing prelude. An algorithm deciding Maya was a problem before she'd even turned the corner. This isn't just about one bad stop, she said quietly. This is the architecture of the whole thing. And it's built to hunt certain people. Malik nodded. Yeah, and it's learning. Every time it flags someone and an officer responds, it treats that as confirmation it made the right call, which means it's only going to get worse. Darnell exhaled slowly. She'd been in this department long enough to know that a broken system could be fixed, but a system designed to be this way was something else entirely. It meant every encounter like Maya's wasn't an accident. It was the point. She closed the tablet, the image of Maya's face still lingering in her mind. She didn't know the woman personally, but she recognized the look. Composure under pressure, the kind people develop when they've had to walk into rooms that weren't built for them and still find a way to stand tall. Malik broke the silence. You want me to dig deeper? Pull all alerts in the past month. Do it, Darnell said, and cross-reference them with officer dispatch logs. I want to see just how many of these alerts ended up with a stop like hers. He stood to leave, the quiet tap of his shoes fading down the hall. Darnell remained at her desk, staring out into the near-empty bullpen. Somewhere out there, she knew, people were going to bed believing they were safer because of Neighborhood Shield, never realizing the price of that comfort was paid by someone else's dignity. She reached for her coffee, now cold, and set it back down untouched. Her mind was already racing ahead. Reports to pull, questions to ask, the delicate line between exposing the truth and becoming its next target. The app's tagline had been see something, say something, faster. She wondered if the people who wrote it understood that sometimes the thing being seen was nothing more than skin. Not lifeless machines, she thought, not neutral lines of code. These systems had been taught what to fear, and they'd learned their lessons well. They weren't just reflecting bias. They were enforcing it, one alert at a time. And right now, somewhere in Eden Hills, that enforcement had a face, a name, and 2 leashes in her hands. Elsewhere, Maya walks past Eden West High School and hears screaming. The late afternoon air around Eden West High carried the restless energy of freedom. The final bell had rung less than 5 minutes ago, and the campus was in its usual state of organized chaos. Students spilling into the courtyard, voices bouncing off brick walls, the occasional slam of a locker door. The golden edge of daylight slid between the buildings, but the warmth didn't reach the cluster of kids forming a tight, noisy ring near the front steps. Maya had been walking along the sidewalk with Atlas and Nova, taking the long way home to avoid the stretch of Brookline, where her nerves still buzzed from earlier. She noticed a crowd first, a shifting circle of teenage faces, some excited, others tense. Then came the sharp commands, barked in a voice that had no business belonging to a schoolyard. Hands behind your back. Now! Her pace quickened. The ring of students parted just enough for her to see him, Officer David Knox, the school's SRO, with one knee grinding into the back of a girl who couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds. Ariana Hill, 16. Her cheek was pressed against the concrete, her arms twisted awkwardly beneath her phone lying cracked and face down a few feet away. Maya caught fragments from the crowd. She was just texting, "He's tripping. Somebody record this." Several already had their phones out. The small red dots are recording icons glowing like tiny warnings. Knox's face was set in that impassive, stone-cold expression Maya knew too well. The massive authority used to justify force before anyone even asked why it was needed. His grip was firm on Ariana's wrist. His weight settled with calculated pressure. "Officer," Maya called out, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Knox didn't look up. "Step back, ma'am. This is school business." "School business doesn't involve choking a student over a phone," she said, moving closer. The dog stayed behind her, trained to hold position, their ears twitching at the tension in her voice. Knox's eyes flicked up, locking on hers. There it was, the recognition, not just of her face, but the fact that she was a woman Rayner had stopped earlier. The faintest twitch in his jaw confirmed it. "She refused to comply," he said flatly. "She's a child," Maya countered, lowering her tone but keeping it razor-sharp. "And right now, she's in danger of serious injury. You're going to get off her, and we're going to handle this without sending someone to the ER." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ariana's breath came in short, panicked bursts. Her eyes darted toward Maya, wide and pleading. Knox straightened slightly, but his knee stayed where it was. "You interfering in a lawful detention, Ms. Brooks?" "I'm stopping an unlawful one," Maya replied. "You know what this looks like on camera? Right now. There are at least 10 angles of you kneeling on a black teenager's neck because she wouldn't hand over a phone." That made him pause. Just for a beat, but Maya caught it. She took a step forward, hands visible, her posture calm but unyielding. "I'm asking you to stand up, officer. Right now, before this turns into something neither of us can walk away from clean." For a moment, it was a silent battle. His authority against her composure, his uniform against her unwavering stare. The crowd seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Knox shifted his weight back, rising to his feet. Ariana curled onto her side, coughing, clutching her wrist. Maya moved instantly, positioning herself between Ariana and Knox as if her body alone could absorb whatever else might come. "You're done here," she told him. Knox's gaze darkened. "Careful, Brooks. You're stacking up a record with this department." His voice carried a threat wrapped in bureaucratic inevitability. She didn't flinch. Better a record for doing the right thing than a stain for doing the wrong one. She knelt beside Ariana, speaking low enough for only her to hear. "You okay?" Ariana nodded faintly, though her hands trembled. He said I couldn't be on my phone, and I told him it was my mom texting me." Next thing, her voice broke. Maya helped her to her feet, steadying her with a hand at her shoulder. Around them, the students kept filming, some whispering to each other, some glaring openly at Knox. Knox took a deliberate step back, eyes still fixed on Maya. The unspoken message was clear. This wasn't over. He was Rayner's man, and she'd just embarrass him in front of an audience that would make sure the story spread. As they walked away, Ariana leaning slightly into Maya for support, the girl looked up at her with a mix of fear and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, voice shaky. Maya gave her a small, reassuring nod. "You didn't deserve that. None of you ever do." Behind them, Knox stood with his hands on his belt, scanning the crowd as if daring someone to step closer. The belligerent calm in his stance was the same one Maya had seen overseas. Men certain the ground they stood on belonged to them, no matter whose name was on the deed. She didn't look back again. The priority now was getting Ariana somewhere safe, somewhere away from the predatory weight of a badge wielded without conscience. But she knew this scene wouldn't just vanish into memory. The phones had been rolling the whole time. In a few hours, maybe less, the footage would be online, pixelated proof of the hierarchy that played out in schools like Eden West every day. That knowledge was both a comfort and a warning. Comfort, because the truth would be harder to bury. Warning, because exposing the truth often came with a target on your back. And Maya could feel with absolute certainty that hers had just been painted brighter. His knee weighed more than 100 years of prejudice. The video of the incident went viral, becoming a new piece of the puzzle for Darnell. Jordan's apartment smelled faintly of burnt coffee and the kind of late nights only city people knew. Screens humming, old takeout cartons stacked like trophies of survival. Maya sat stiffly on the couch, eyes locked on the laptop screen as the video played for the third time. In it, she saw herself, her face, her voice, but twisted into something she didn't recognize. The footage appeared to be from a body cam. Rayner's. It showed her lunging forward, hands raised, shoving him back before the confrontation even began. The sound was harsh, almost theatrical. Her voice booming, the dogs barking like they'd been trained to maul. Maya felt her jaw tighten. "That's not me," she said, though her tone was more numb than outraged. Jordan leaned forward, fingers flying over the keyboard. His dark eyes narrowed in that way they did when he was solving a puzzle no one else could see. "No, kidding, it's not you. This is stitched, AI rendered, and they didn't even bother to hide it well from the right tools." Lauren Darnell sat at the small kitchen table, sipping a coffee that had long gone cold, her trench coat draped over the chair. She'd come straight from the precinct, her expression caught between concern and calculation. Doesn't matter if it's sloppy. It looks real enough to anyone who doesn't know what to look for. And that's 99% of the public. Jordan froze the frame where her hand touched Rayner's chest. "Here, see that?" He magnified the image until the pixels were big enough to make out subtle inconsistencies. "Your face texture is different in this frame than the rest of the clip. Lighting angle's off, too. The shadows on your neck don't match the street lamp behind you." He toggled to a split screen, pulling up traffic camera footage from the same night, same location. "Now, this is the real deal. The city's cams are garbage resolution, but good enough to see you never got closer than 5 feet until he grabbed Atlas's leash." He scrubbed back and forth, syncing the two feeds. "Watch the sound. 2. On the fake, your dog's bark is right on top of your words. In reality, there's a half-second delay, just like you'd expect in real life." Maya watched in silence. She wanted to feel vindicated, but the knot in her stomach only tightened. "How long before people see your proof?" she asked. Jordan's hand stilled on the keys. "Proof doesn't work like that anymore, sis. You know it. The fake's already racked up 250,000 views in 2 hours. People are quoting it, screenshotting it, remixing it with their own captions. Even if I put this analysis out now, it won't travel as fast as a lie." Lauren set her cup down with a quiet clink. "They don't need to erase the truth, Maya. They just need to give folks another version they're more comfortable believing. And some of them will fight tooth and nail to keep it, because it justifies what they already think about you." The words landed heavier than Maya expected. She'd seen propaganda before. Overseas, in war zones where truth was another weapon. But here, in Eden Hills, it felt more personal, more poisonous. She sank back against the couch. "So what now?" "Wait for the tide to turn." Lauren shook her head. "We don't wait. We trace it. Jordan, can you find the origin point?" Jordan cracked his knuckles. "Already on it. Whoever made this wasn't smart enough to scrub all metadata. There's a signature in the compression pattern, probably an automated deepfake suite. And yeah, here we go." He typed faster, the screen filling with lines of code and network maps. "It's been pushed through 5 burner accounts. But the earliest upload was from a private server tied to an Eden County law enforcement subdomain. Guess whose?" Maya's eyes narrowed. "Rayner. Or someone close enough to him to use his playground," Jordan said. Lauren's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and slid it face down on the table. "If this came from inside, it's more than just a smear. It's a coordinated move to discredit you before whatever comes next." Maya rubbed her temples. "They're framing me as violent, so when I call out what's happening in that school, no one listens. Hell, maybe so no one cares if I end up in a cell." Jordan spun the laptop around so both women could see the network chart. "I can blow this up publicly, But once I do, we all become targets. These guys play dirty, and they don't stop when you're down. I'm already a target, Maya said. Might as well make it count. Jordan didn't smile, but there was something in his eyes, pride, mixed with fear. You always were too stubborn for your own good. Lauren stood, adjusting her coat. I'll take the verification chain. If this ever makes it into court, we need an airtight timeline showing manipulation. She paused, looking at Maya. You need to be careful where you go, and who you trust. Maya gave a short nod, but her mind was elsewhere, on Ariana's frightened face, on Knox's glare, on the way Rayner's name kept circling back like a predator in the dark. Jordan's fingers stilled again. His eyes flicked to a new notification, and the color drained from his face. Maya! He turned the laptop so she could see. On the screen was a post from an anonymous account, her brother's home address. The comment thread beneath it was already filling with threats, mockery, and the kind of coded language she'd learned to translate instantly into danger. The deep fake was no longer just a lie. It was bait, and someone out there was already following the scent. They don't need to erase the truth. They just need to create another truth that's easier to swallow. When Maya thought the situation couldn't get any worse, Jordan's home address was posted online. The first pounding on the door was so violent it rattled the picture frames on Jordan's living room wall. Maya was halfway through the hallway before the second blow came, accompanied by the guttural bark of command through a bullhorn. Eden County SWAT. Step away from the door. Hands where we can see them. It was 1:03 a.m., and the apartment, moments ago lit only by the muted glow of Jordan's computer screens, exploded into chaos. Jordan appeared from the kitchen, still in sweatpants, a mug in his hand that he nearly dropped. His 8-year-old daughter, Kira, poked her head out from the bedroom door, confusion in her wide, sleepy eyes. Maya's instincts took over. Down! Now! She shouted, shoving Jordan toward the floor and sweeping Kira into her arms before hitting the carpet herself. She could see shadows moving to the blinds, tall, armed silhouettes fanning out across the porch. Red and blue light spilled through every crack in the curtains. What the hell is this? Jordan hissed, his voice already shaking. Swatting, Maya said, keeping her tone low and even, though her pulse was thundering in her ears. Someone called in something bad. Armed suspect. Probably used your address. A loud metallic clang signaled the breaching ram, slamming against the lock. We will enter in 3 seconds, the voice outside barked. Stop, Maya called out, rising to one knee, one arm raised. There's a child in here. No one is armed. You've got the wrong. The front door exploded inward with a splintering crack, the hinges giving way as black-clad figures flooded the apartment. Laser sights danced across the walls, cutting through the living room in chaotic lines. Get down! Hands behind your head, one officer roared. Maya obeyed instantly, dropping her weight over Kira, keeping the girl's small body shielded. Jordan was frozen, his hands up but his breathing ragged, as 2 rifles locked on him from across the room. Clear that corner. Check the back. Boots thundered down the hallway, the sound of drawers and closets being yanked open echoing like a drumbeat. Officer, Maya shouted, locking eyes with the man nearest to her. You've been given false information. This is a swatting call. Check your dispatch logs. Her voice cut through, but not enough to slow the movement. One man had already pulled zip ties from his belt. Another was barking into a radio. No visual on weapon yet. Continuing search. And then through the noise, another voice. Calm, sharp, and authoritative. Stand down. All units stand down right now. Lauren Darnell stepped through the busted doorframe, badge out, her presence slicing the tension like a blade. She moved with purpose, eyes sweeping the room before zeroing in on the lead officer. Sergeant, I'm Internal Affairs. This address is tied to an ongoing harassment case involving one of your own. I've confirmed this call is bogus. The man hesitated, the barrel of his rifle dipping slightly. We got a report of an armed hostage situation. From an unverified source using a spoof number. Lauren interrupted, her tone leaving no room for argument. Your caller is the same one responsible for a deepfake video targeting Maya Brooks. The sergeant's jaw worked, torn between protocol and the weight of Lauren's certainty. He finally gave a curt nod. Units, pull back. Secure your gear. The apartment exhaled as the armed presence began to recede, but the air was still electric with adrenaline. The front door hung useless on one hinge, the carpet littered with splinters. Jordan sat up slowly, his face pale, sweat clinging to his hairline. They were gonna... His voice broke before he could finish. They could have, Maya said, softer now, but no less fierce. She helped Kira to her feet, brushing the girl's hair back with trembling fingers. They came in ready to fire Jordan. Over a lie. Over someone's idea of a game. Kira clung to Maya's side, her small hands bunching in the fabric of Maya's sweatshirt. Jordan's gaze darted to his daughter, then to the shattered door, and finally to Maya. You know who did this, don't you? Maya didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. The name was already in the air between them. Lauren holstered her badge and stepped closer. This wasn't random. The timing's too perfect. Rayner, or whoever's running this with him, wanted to escalate. First smear your name, then threaten your safety. Now make you a statistic in a midnight raid. Jordan scrubbed his hands over his face. This was seconds away from being one of those stories on the news. Armed suspect killed during police response. Only there's no suspect. Just me and Kira. Maya stood, the tremor in her hands now replaced by something colder, heavier. They want to destroy you, Jordan. Not just your name. Your life. She turned to Lauren. This doesn't stop unless we make it stop. Lauren met her gaze. Then you know what you're walking into. I've been walking into it since the first time I passed Rayner Street, Maya replied. Jordan looked between them, a mix of fear and reluctant admiration in his eyes. You're really going to go after them? Maya nodded once. I'm done playing defense. Lauren straightened, almost like she'd been waiting to hear those words. Then we move fast, before they set up the next trap. The wreckage of the door framed the night outside, red and blue lights fading as the last of the SWAT trucks pulled away. In the distance, a neighbor's window glowed with the cold light of a phone screen. Already recording, already sharing. Kira's small voice broke the silence. Annie Maya didn't come back? Maya crouched to meet her niece's eyes. Not if I can help it. She glanced once more at Jordan, at the exhaustion in his face, at the shaking in his hands, and something inside her hardened into resolve. One click of a mouse, and 5 gun barrels were waiting at your door. Maya decided she would not wait any longer. She would strike back. The warehouse loomed like a rusting carcass against the skeletal skyline of Eden South's industrial strip. Windows were boarded over with warped plywood, the paint on the corrugated steel walls peeling into jagged flakes. The street was silent except for the low hum of a distant transformer, its dying buzz carrying on the wind. Maya slipped through a narrow gap in the chain-link fence, Atlas padding at her side. His ears pricked. Nova stayed behind with Lauren as backup. Tonight was not a mission for both dogs. The moonlight barely touched the cracked asphalt, making the approach feel like wading through shadows. She pressed her palm against the cold metal of the side door, testing its give. Unlocked, just as Curtis said. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of oil, mildew, and disuse. Rows of shelving units rose into the gloom, skeletal frames still holding boxes stamped with shipping labels from companies that no longer existed. Somewhere deep in the darkness, the faint mechanical whir of a drone broke the stillness. Curtis Vale emerged from between 2 shelves, his face half hidden beneath the hood of a sweatshirt. He looked older than she remembered, less the grinning ex-partner who once had her back, more the ghost of a man ground down by something heavier than years. "You came alone?" he asked, voice low but edged. "Mostly," Maya replied, her eyes scanning the shadows. "What's the layout?" Curtis gestured toward the far end of the warehouse. "Office space in the back. That's where the servers are. The files you're looking for, asset seizures, falsified reports. They're on a portable drive. Rayner's personal insurance policy." She nodded, keeping her steps deliberate. "Then let's." The drones were intensified, now layered with a high-pitched ping, almost like a heartbeat. Maya froze. The thing was tracking her, pivoting smoothly in the air, its thermal camera locking in on her position. "Why is it moving with me?" she demanded. Curtis's eyes dropped to the leash in her hand, the braided nylon glinting faintly in the light of the drone's IR beam. Her stomach sank. "You put a tracker on Atlas," she said flatly. He flinched, not at her words, but at the weight in her voice. "I didn't have a choice. They know about Dylan. My kid's treatments cost more than I can cover. Rayner, he said if I didn't cooperate. You sold me out to him?" The betrayal in her tone was quiet but searing. Curtis swallowed hard. "I'm not here to defend what I did. I'm here to make it right. That's why I called you." The drone dipped lower, its body-mounted light flashing red in a deliberate signal. Somewhere in the rafters, the faint echo of Mercer's voice carried over a comm unit. "She's inside. Move to intercept." Maya's mind snapped into calculation. The drone was equipped with both thermal and motion sensors. Once it had a lock, there was no hiding. "Unless you can kill the power to this place?" she asked. Curtis's eyes flicked toward the breaker room on the mezzanine. "Yeah, but when it goes dark, the backup batteries will kick in for the servers." "Doesn't matter," she said. "I just need the blackout for them, not for me." He hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Give me 30 seconds." She crouched low, letting Atlas heel tightly at her side as Curtis broke into a sprint toward the mezzanine. The drone spun to follow him, Mercer's voice crackling louder. "Vale's moving. Get eyes on him." The lights went out mid-command. The warehouse plunged into a total, suffocating black. Even the distant hum of the transformer outside was gone, replaced by an eerie silence. In the dark, Maya moved like water, slipping between aisles, counting her steps, mapping every shift in the air. Without the drone's light, Mercer's advantage was gone. The only sound was a faint rasp of her own breathing, and Atlas's paws whispering against the dusty floor. Her fingers brushed against the doorframe. The office. Inside, the glow from a single battery-powered monitor cast a faint blue halo across a desk cluttered with papers, USB sticks, and a half-empty bottle of whiskey. She slid behind the desk, eyes scanning until she saw it. A black, palm-sized solid-state drive, taped to the underside of the keyboard tray. Her hand closed over it just as the faint sweep of a flashlight beam cut across the far wall. Voices, 2 of them, closing in fast. She slipped the drive into the inner pocket of her jacket and crouched, letting the beam pass overhead before moving toward the side exit. But as she reached the doorway, a shadow blocked her path. "Maya." Rayner's voice came from just beyond the threshold, smooth and taunting. "You're a long way from your dog-walking route." Her jaw tightened. "And you're a long way from a badge." He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Hand over what you took, and maybe I let you walk out without a limp." From somewhere to the left, Mercer's heavier footsteps shifted closer. The trap was tightening. And then, a sudden flicker of light from the mezzanine, followed by the crackle of exposed wires. Curtis's voice shouted from above, "Move." Maya didn't hesitate. She pivoted hard, Atlas surging at her side, using the chaos to break toward the emergency exit. The blackout was total again, and she knew the building better now than they did in the dark. The slam of a shoulder against the door, the rush of cold night air. She was out. Curtis was already there, breathing hard, eyes wild. "Got it." She patted her jacket. "Got it." They didn't stop running until the warehouse was 2 blocks behind them, its silhouette swallowed by the jagged line of the industrial park. When the lights go out, the truth begins to glow. Maya and Curtis headed straight for the private security company's server room, the beating heart of Rayner's operation. The basement of Sentinel Security was a different kind of dark, engineered, deliberate, the kind that hummed with the quiet arrogance of people who believed they were untouchable. Rows of server racks glowed faintly in the gloom, their indicator lights blinking like the eyes of predators in hiding. The air was chilled to preserve the machines, but it carried the sterile tang of something far less natural: control. Maya slipped through the reinforced door Curtis had pried open for her, the small SSD from the warehouse still burning like a live coal in her jacket pocket. Atlas padded silently at her left, Nova at her right, their eyes bright, ears tuned to every sound. The transfer terminal was at the far end of the room, guarded by nothing more than a biometric lock Curtis had already fed into her wristband. She moved quickly, inserting the drive and initiating the data sync. Lines of encrypted code cascaded down the monitor, unpacking years' worth of confiscation records, false incident reports, and digital receipts that tied Rayner's unit to a spiderweb of illegal seizures targeted at black and brown families. She was halfway through the download when the comms in her ear crackled. Lauren Darnell's voice came through, urgent, tight. "Maya, listen to me. I just got word from the DA's office. If anyone walks out of there with injuries you caused, Rayner will hide behind qualified immunity. The case will get buried before it even sees daylight." Maya's jaw clenched. She understood. One bruise, one broken bone. Anything they could twist into reasonable force, and this whole operation would dissolve into procedural quicksand. Footsteps echoed down the stairwell. Heavy ones. The kind that weren't afraid to be heard. Greg Rayner entered first, flanked by 2 armed guards. His smirk was the same as it had been outside the warehouse. Superior, poisonous. "Well, look at that. Caught you in my pantry." Maya didn't move from the terminal. The progress bar in the corner of the screen ticked past 70%. "Pantry's full of stolen goods," she said evenly. He nodded toward the guards. "Take her down. Don't scuff the dogs. They'll just cry about it online." Both guards advanced, rifles leveled. The smell of gun oil reached her before the barrels did. Maya inhaled once, slow. Her muscles coiled, but her mind razor still. She'd spent years training for moments like this. Not to kill, but to finish without leaving a mark they could use. A sharp whistle from her lips was all it took. Atlas surged forward in a blur. Teeth snapping not at flesh, but at the metal of the first guard's rifle. He yanked it free with the kind of precision that comes from months of disciplined drills, spinning away before the man could react. Nova swept low, her powerful body hooking behind the second guard's legs, sending him down hard but controlled. No impact ahead, no damage that couldn't be walked off. Both men were on the ground, breathless, but alive. The room smelled faintly of adrenaline now. Rayner raised his own weapon, but Maya stepped forward before he could sight her, Atlas still holding the rifle out of his reach. She kept her voice even, almost calm. "Do it, and the whole world sees you aiming at an unarmed woman. These cameras are yours, remember?" His eyes flicked upward, almost involuntarily, toward the black domes and ceiling. She was right. They were recording everything. And in that instant, Maya knew she'd already won this exchange. The download hit 100%. The terminal chimed softly, an almost anticlimactic sound for the weight of what had just been secured. She ejected the drive and slipped it into her jacket. Stepping backward toward the door, Atlas and Nova maintaining their flanking positions. Rayner's voice followed her, low and venomous. "You think this changes anything?" She met his gaze. "I don't have to change everything. Just enough to break you." The guards were still catching their breath as she pushed through the reinforced door, sealing it behind her. The hum of the servers faded with every step she took up the stairwell, replaced by the pounding of her own heartbeat and the steady rhythm of her dog's paws. She had what she needed. Not just the data, but the footage. Indisputable proof that she'd left without causing harm, that the only aggression had come from his side. Evidence they couldn't twist without tying themselves into knots. She didn't need to break a single bone. She just needed to break the story. The data was in her hands now, and it was time to make it public. The municipal press room of Eden County was built for polite announcements and ribbon-cutting ceremonies, not for detonations of truth. Yet by noon, every seat was filled, every wall lined with people holding cameras, phones, and notepads. The air buzzed with a tension that had nothing to do with summer heat. It was the kind of atmosphere where the right words could tilt an entire city. Maya stood at the center table, flanked by Lauren Darnell on her right, and her brother Jordan on her left. Behind them, a projection screen displayed the first slide of the evidence, a timeline of confiscations, false incident reports, and financial transactions flowing through Central Securities accounts like dark tributaries. The data dump had been sent the night before to independent journalists, civil rights lawyers, and every grassroots outlet willing to run it without a corporate filter. The first few minutes were methodical. Darnell laying out the verified records, Jordan showing side-by-side comparisons of the original traffic camera footage and the deep-fake Rayner's people had planted. Gasps rippled across the room when the alteration became obvious. The fake light sources mismatched, the shadows contradicting physics. But the moment that pinned the room in place came when Maya stepped back and motioned toward the far side of the dais. Ariana Hill walked up slowly, her school blazer slightly too big for her narrow shoulders, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. The microphone stood a little tall, so Jordan reached forward and lowered it. Ariana's voice was steady, but there was a small tremor at the edges, a tremor that carried more weight than any rehearsed statement. I was just leaving my math class. I was on my phone because my mom texted me about my little brother's asthma medicine. Officer Knox told me to hang up. I said I'd be done in a second. The next thing I knew, I couldn't breathe. The room was so quiet, you could hear the clicking of camera shutters from the back wall. Ariana glanced at Maya, then back at the crowd. I didn't fight him. I didn't yell. But his knee was still on my neck, and I thought, this is it. I just want to go to school without being scared. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Not awkward silence, but the kind that presses down, forcing every person in the room to feel the weight of the words. Then, as if on cue, someone in the back began clapping. The sound spread row by row until the entire room was on its feet, the applause echoing against the marble walls. Maya didn't smile. She let the moment stand on its own. It wasn't about her. It was about Ariana and the thousands like her who didn't get microphones or cameras. The questions came fast after that. Reporters asking about Sentinel's contracts with the city, about the role of the Neighborhood Shield app in racially profiling residents, about the connection between Rayner's officers and the unlawful asset seizures. Maya and Darnell answered with precision, never speculating, only presenting what was already undeniable. Outside, on the steps of City Hall, members of the community had gathered, watching the live stream on a mounted projector. You could hear their reaction to the open windows, gasps, shouts, chants starting to build. A story that had been contained, manipulated, and weaponized was suddenly loose in the open air, where even the mainstream outlets had no choice but to acknowledge it. One local anchor, broadcasting live from the back of the room, summed it up in a single line. For the first time, it seems Eden County will have to look at itself in the mirror. Maya glanced sideways at Jordan. His jaw was tight, but there was a light in his eyes she hadn't seen since before the deep fake, before the swatting. A quiet acknowledgement that this moment was worth the sleepless nights, the danger, the weight of knowing they were up against an entire machine. When the final question was answered, Maya gathered the documents, tucking the SSD back into the inside pocket of her blazer. The crowd outside was louder now, chanting her name alongside Ariana's, a rhythm of solidarity that felt like it could crack the foundation of the building. But Maya knew better than to think the fight was over. The people in power didn't fold just because they'd been exposed. They doubled down. She could already see the headlines forming in certain corners of the internet. The disinformation campaigns that would try to muddy the waters. As she walked toward the exit, a reporter called out, "Ms. Brooks, what happens now?" She didn't break stride. Now they know we're watching. The bright sun outside was blinding for a moment. The crowd surged forward, not a push, but to close ranks around her, Ariana, and the others who had stood on that stage. Hands reached out in solidarity, some offering thanks, others offering promises to keep fighting. Up in a high-rise across the street, hidden behind polarized glass, Greg Rayner watched the entire scene unfold on a muted feed. His hand tightened around the edge of the desk until the leather inlay creaked. Every instinct in him screamed to take back control, to make an example so brutal it would erase this day from memory. He turned from the window, his face a mask of calculated fury. For months, he kept his moves indirect. Coded calls proxies digital smears. But the line had been crossed now, not by the data, but by the fact that she had made the city listen. Rayner had lost a leash. And when men like him lose the leash, they bite. Rayner lost control, and in that loss, he made the choice to step out from the shadows. He would handle Maya Brooks himself. Rayner lost control and decided to take direct action. The last light of the day bled into the sky, casting long shadows across Maya Brooks' living room. The house was quiet, save for the steady breathing of Atlas and Nova, curled at opposite ends of the couch like sentinels on break. Outside, the suburban street seemed as calm as a postcard image Eden Hills liked to project. But Maya had learned that quiet here often meant trouble coming. She was in the kitchen, rinsing out a coffee mug, when the air shifted. It wasn't a sound at first, more an instinct, a faint vibration in the floorboards, a subtle displacement of air from somewhere it shouldn't be. Atlas lifted his head. Nova's ears twitched. Maya turned toward the hall, just as Greg Rayner stepped out from the shadow of the doorway. He wasn't wearing his uniform. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, forearms taut, one hand wrapped tightly around the black handle of a knife that caught the last sliver of daylight. His face was a mixture of strain and resolve, but underneath it all was the unmistakable glint of desperation. She didn't flinch. "You're out of moves, Rayner." Her voice was even, as if they were still standing in a conference room instead of her home. "Walk out of here. Face the court. You might still have the chance to be judged like a man." He smirked, but was thin, hollow. "Judged like a man? You already turned me into a headline. Brooks. You think a jury is going to see a man? They'll see a monster." "That's on you," she said, her eyes fixed on his. "But you still get to choose how this ends. The law or the floor." For a moment, he hesitated. The muscles in his jaw worked, and the knife dipped ever so slightly. It could have gone either way. But then his gaze flicked toward the dogs, back to her, and something in his expression hardened. He lunged. The next few seconds unfolded like muscle memory. Atlas launched from the couch, a tawny blur intercepting Rayner's knife arm before it could reach her. Nova swept low, teeth catching the cuff of his jeans, and yanked his legs out from under him. The knife clattered against the tile, spinning toward the baseboard. Rayner hit the ground with a grunt. Air knocked from his lungs. Atlas pinning his arm. Nova braced at his side. Maya was already on the phone. 911. Home invasion. Armed suspect. Neutralized. No shots fired. She recited her address with clip precision, the same way she'd done in countless after-action reports during her Navy years. Rayner struggled under the combined weight of the dogs, but every movement only tightened their hold. He wasn't bleeding. She had trained him to control without maiming, but his face was flushed with the realization that the fight had ended before it truly began. Within minutes, sirens wailed down the block, red and blue lights bouncing off the neatly trimmed hedges of Eden Hills. Officers swarmed the porch, weapons drawn, then lowered as they saw Rayner on the floor, hands splayed, Atlas and Nova obediently holding their positions until Maya gave the release command. She stepped back, letting the officers take him. "He's all yours," she said, her voice flat. The trial moved faster than anyone expected. Between the warehouse data, the deepfake evidence, the swatting call logs, and Ariana Hill's testimony, the case against Rayner was airtight. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on multiple counts, abuse of power, conspiracy, and unlawful seizure among them. His sentencing came with an unprecedented consent decree forcing Eden County's police department into a comprehensive reform program, overseen by federal monitors. For Maya, it was a victory, but not the kind you celebrate with champagne. This was the kind you mark quietly, knowing the cost and understanding the fight wasn't truly over. She declined interviews, letting the lawyers and advocates handle the media cycle. Instead, she turned to something she'd been sketching in the margins of her notebook for months, a training center where therapy dogs could work with veterans, students, and survivors of violence. It took 6 months to convert the old armory into the Eden Hills Canine Resilience Center. The front room smelled faintly of cedar and coffee, and the back field was a wide stretch of grass where Atlas and Nova led group sessions. The first wave of participants came from 2 directions: Marine Corps veterans navigating PTSD and high school students who'd experienced on-campus policing. It was an unlikely mix, but in that space with the dogs as bridges, the barriers broke down fast. Ariana Hill came by after school one day, officially hired as the center's youngest assistant trainer. She moved with ease around the dogs, her laughter carrying across the yard in a way that was lighter than it had been in months. "Nova listens to you better than me," Maya teased, watching as the shepherd cross trotted beside Ariana in perfect sync. "That's 'cause she knows I don't yell," Ariana shot back with a grin. Jordan handled the security systems, top-grade surveillance, encrypted data backups, and a community hotline linked directly to pro bono legal aid. Laura and Darnell visited often, bringing updates on the department's compliance with the decree. Each report a reminder that change, while slow, was measurable. But even in the quiet moments, Maya knew the wider battle hadn't gone anywhere. The algorithms were still out there, coded biases still hiding in software and policy. There would always be another Rayner somewhere, convinced he could bend the system to his will. She stood on the porch one evening, watching Atlas and Nova chase each other across the yard while the sun dipped behind the hills. Inside, Ariana was helping a new student fit a harness on a therapy dog, her voice patient, encouraging. Jordan was at the desk, tapping away at a security patch. The center was alive in a way that felt permanent. The phone on the porch railing buzzed with news alert. Another incident in another state. A headline about a young man stopped for fitting the description. Maya read it, felt the familiar coil of anger, then slid the phone into her pocket. She wasn't done. None of them were. The last chance had fallen to the kitchen floor alongside the shattered glass. The story ends, but the real-life battle continues. And that's how a walk in the suburbs turned into a showdown that tore the mask off an entire system. Maya didn't just protect herself. She exposed the ugly truth too many still pretend not to see. The question is, if this happened on your street, would you speak up or stay silent? Let us know in the comments. If you believe stories like this need to be told, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe so we can keep shining a light where others would rather keep it dark.